Welcome. You're tuned in to the We Are All Artists podcast, a space where we talk about living life as a conscious creative. I'm your host, Adriana Douglas. Our intention is to support you throughout the process of discovering your inner artist and transforming from the inside out. Here in this space, we believe that the way out is through. On the other side is a world with more art, more beauty, and access to more of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me today. And now let's begin. To help you ring in the new year, I have something new for you all. I made a free resource guide of all the things that have helped me over the past few years and essentially what blueprint I wish I had when I was starting out a journey of living more intentionally. This blueprint is for you if you are a DIYer, if you want to get an idea of some of the areas that I really like to go into detail with when I work with folks, and or if you really just want to get a jump start on your journey and you want to do it independently at the moment without any further support from a community or a mentor, and feel that this would be supportive in getting you oriented to a new way of being. I really believe that if you pick just one of these books or one of these areas, that you will learn a lot about yourself and have so much more awareness and compassion for the journey. And my wish for you is that this guide makes you feel more inspired and more connected to yourself and gets you to take that next right action for you on your journey. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out with me over the last few episodes. I've had so much fun interviewing friends, mentors, and doing these solo shows. They have helped me to grow. They've helped me to expand. And they've really, in some ways, challenged me and brought me to some edges that I did not know were going to happen, which is half the fun. So here are some practical learnings from my podcast journey so far. I started this journey in August when I signed up for Kathy Heller's Your Turn to Podcast program. And with that program, it was amazing. And I set the goal at that point in time to release the podcast by October 31st. And that was back in August. And so one thing that I noticed was it became easier once there was a deadline, because sometimes we have these creative projects and there's like no deadline. There's nobody telling you when you have to do it, like when you have to put it out or what the deliverables are. And so having that accountability to set a date was huge. Now, I ended up releasing the podcast about 2 weeks after that. And that really was, for me, I appreciate a runway of content, and I do have a full-time job. So it was important for me to be able to create enough episodes with enough runway that I was not in a pinch without having a show to release on a certain week. So that was really important to me. So that's why I was okay with delaying the deadline a bit. But the first really lesson is the deadline supported me in actually getting the creative project out. It's one thing when you're talking about quote unquote birthing a creation or the ideation phase where the idea or the concept is brewing and it's not fully formed yet and you're trying to force it out. Definitely, I'm not into that. This was more, I already had all of that formed. I was already past that ideation vision phase and I was more in the execution phase, and I really just needed the accountability and the momentum to put it all together and release it. And one of the most helpful things and permission slips that Kathy and her course gave me was getting out of the perfectionism and into this mindset of like C+ student. And because I have had so much of a journey with working through perfectionism and just releasing control of the outcome, this C plus student mentality, like for me, it was like, okay, I have to think of and embody a C plus student. What does that look like? Okay, like I'm going on summer vacation. It's like I'm one project or one class away from that school bell ringing and being like off for 2 months. Like, what does that look like? And so for me, some of those things, what it looked like was like, if I forgot to put the outro in one of the episodes, like I might not redo it. If I didn't have the volume perfect between the transitions of the show, like might not change it. If I messed up a word, I on some days would edit it out, and on some days I'd leave it because it was really about timing and energy and also my like capabilities in terms of creating a show. I'm not the techiest person, so even that in and of itself was a stretch to not get overwhelmed by tech and by all the online things that you might have to do. And so I would say that's number one from learnings from a podcast. Number two, the episodes and the interviews that I was doing were all recorded pretty far in advance. And so kind of like similar to the healing journey, this was not linear at all. It was not like I record this episode and then it gets put in the queue. Like there wasn't anything like that. It was really like sort of spontaneous, like when people were available, when I had time to edit, and kind of like what mood I was in. Like, ooh, do I want to like edit this today or that today? And like, ooh, okay, cool. So I have like created the social media reel for this one. And so that's the one that's going to go out today. So it was kind of random. But at the same time, I felt like there was probably a little bit of synchronicity and serendipity available and kind of allowing for the magic and the surprise to come through as to kind of why they went out in that order and not being so attached to what order they needed to go in. So that was something that felt more freeing to me instead of like trying to fit them all into like the exact order in which they were recorded. I personally, my next point is that I learned is I personally batch record solo episodes. So for me, I might record 2, 3, 4 episodes in a row. And that's just something that works for me in terms of focus and energy. So I know there are certain days that I really, 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 really want to chat and be outwardly focused. And then there are days or like a week at a time that I'm like, I don't want to be chatty at all. And so that's important to know about yourself, is whether you do better like spontaneously, like, oh, I'm going to just record this in my car because I'm inspired, or no, I'm going to batch it because that really supports my energy levels. And so either way works. At the moment, batch recording has worked for me. There haven't been very many moments where I'm spontaneously recording like a voice memo in the car, but I might do that and then batch record later. So you might find me taking a ton of notes in my phone or recording myself a voice memo to come back to later. And then when I feel inspired, I like do it all at once. Another thing that I learned was people are really kind. People were so nice in the whole interview process, in the saying yes to being on the show, in all the people in Kathy's course that were so supportive that were also on their podcasting journeys. I just found that there was so much kindness involved, and that was so amazing and healing to know how supported the show was from the beginning, from its creation, and that made me really happy to know and to feel. So thank you for everybody that's been a part of this journey so far. A few last things. There was something that in Kathy's course she referred to as the dip, and I think she referred to it even in our first class. Like, you're gonna hit the dip where you're like not sure if you can continue. And it's from a Seth Godin book called The Dip. I'll link in the show notes. And the book, I'm going to take this in a different route, but really the lesson here is the self-awareness that was required of the things that I was potentially allowing to stop me or get in my way or sink the ship, and that were not necessary. So some of those for me, I hope this can be helpful for some of you out there, especially if you're going to start a podcast of your own. Perfectionism was one for sure. Like, knowing when that was coming out to play, of like it almost felt in some ways like excuses, like, oh, I can't release that episode yet because the caption isn't made for the Instagram, or that episode has the fade in, fade out, the music's messed up, or like things like that I was gonna potentially allow to stop me from releasing it or delaying it. It was just this perfectionism in disguise that I really had to work with and really be okay with. Like, honestly, well, maybe some people will notice, but probably nobody will notice. Now that you've heard me talking about it, you probably will notice. But it was just being okay with, like, I'm a beginner and like I don't know how to edit this. This is my first time. So like, if it's like okay, it's okay. But like, people are here for the conversation. People are here for the quality of the conversation, of the content. They're not necessarily here to see how perfect you are at recording audio. Obviously a good microphone is important, but that's just about referring back to the perfectionism. Another thing for me was like a vulnerability hangover of like, ooh, can I actually release that? Because I shared something from my life. And obviously, if you're podcasting, you are sharing your story. And that's one of the big reasons of why I started this in the first place, was to be able to tell stories, share stories, promote and amplify stories. And understanding that feeling feelings is okay. It is more than okay. It's a part of the human experience. And that to share when I've had feelings and be able to vocalize them and express them and share them in a way that feels integrated, in a way where I've already processed something and it's ready to be shared, that was okay. And that if there were things that I was not ready to share yet, or like ever share, because I like to keep certain things private, I think we all could use a little discernment in that arena of what's like boundaries, what's private and what's to be shared, and what's just for us and what's for the world to see. And that's not coming from a place of hiding or of being like, oh, I don't want to show the world something. But it was this, for me, this dip was, oh, can I even release that episode? Because I talked about my story, or I talked about an example that maybe not everyone will understand. So I think for me, it was more, if the first dip was about perfectionism, this dip was more about being misunderstood. That the story would be taken in a way that I didn't mean it or intend for it to come out. And so it's just, again, going back to that self-awareness. The other area that I could feel myself in the dip was this amazing inner manager that I have. I'm very type A productive, and I could see how I've been working with this part of me for a while, this inner manager that like needs to have everything in order, and she's awesome. She's cool, she's great. I could feel her getting tired throughout this process. And so it was so interesting to sort of see a part of me that's always been like on her game to all of a sudden teeter along the lines of like depletion of energy. And so I had to really understand how to shift and work with my energy levels in a different way than what I would normally do for my full-time job, which was like just an up level in and of itself. And then the last dip that I'm going to talk about is just this idea that I had to have all of these, like, that the podcast had to be very like fit in a box, that it had to be like easily defined, that I had to be able to have a reason for everything and explanations and really like in a way like needing permission to say the things that I wanted to say. And so that was a really interesting edge to ride and still ride, and I'm sure I will throughout the seasons, is this like, what kind of permission do you need to say like just what you want to express? Like, not in a mean way, not in a, oh, it's my truth, so I get to say it way, even if it's like, you know, not nice, but like it just in a permission to be you. And so this entire experience of the podcast has been the permission slip to be messy, to be myself, to have fun, to enjoy, and know that the last, you know, bit of practical advice, that it's going to get better with age. There are certain things that I've learned, like editing is not my jam. I listened to some of the first few episodes and noticed that I say the word like 100 times, and realizing that there are areas for improvement, things that I could change, but honoring that that's where I was on the journey, and this is all, you know, a reflection back of a snapshot in time for me. So something that's really exciting is to know that this lives on as a snapshot in time of a specific chapter in my life. And so these are some of the learnings that I've had from, you know, this first handful of episodes, first season, and I hope that's helpful. I'm so glad you've been on the journey with me, and I can't wait to continue on soon. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you learned something new and embrace being the student of your own life until the time we meet again. If you'd like a way to support the show and to hear more of this content, it means so much to me for you to take a few minutes out of your day to leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'd love to stay connected with you on Instagram or TikTok at Adriana Goes Creative. You can find me and hit follow while you're feeling inspired right after listening to the show. I can't wait to get a DM from you hearing what you loved about it and what you desire to hear more of. I appreciate each and every one of you so much. I'll talk to you soon. This podcast is for entertainment and general informational purposes only. I am not a licensed healthcare professional, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician or other qualified professional.